The Middle Ages are usually remembered as an age of darkness and decline. But in reality, this era was actually an era of brilliant and brain-boggling inventions that have completely shaped the world we live in today. And in this video, we're about to show you some of the greatest ones. Number 7. Astrolabe, the ancient computer. Well, we're starting this list with one of the most ridiculously advanced devices the medieval world ever invented. And the wild part is, most people today wouldn't even know what they're looking at if one were placed right in front of them. It's called the astrolabe. And for centuries, this strange brass instrument helped people do what sounds almost impossible without electricity. Tell the time, track the stars, measure altitude, figure out latitude, and navigate the world. Its roots go all the way back to the ancient Greek world, and many historians connect its earliest design to Hipparchus of Nicaea in the 2nd century BC. But the astrolabe reached its true brilliance in the medieval Islamic world, where scholars refined it into something astonishingly precise. From there, it spread into Europe, where it remained in use until the 16th century. Most surviving examples were made of brass, though simpler versions were likely built from wood or even paper. Its main body was called the mater. Over that sat the rete, a delicate rotating star map, and on the back was the alidade, a ruler used to sight the sun or a bright star and measure its altitude. And once you had that one reading, the astrolabe could tell you an absurd amount. It could help you find the local time, estimate your position on Earth, and even determine the direction of Mecca for prayer. Persian astronomer al-Sufi, writing in the 10th century, described more than 1,000 uses for it. That's what makes this thing so unique. It wasn't just a scientific tool. It was a working piece of medieval intelligence you could hold in one hand. Number 6. The medieval trebuchet. This was one of the most powerful and brutal siege engines of the Middle Ages. A machine built for one purpose: to break things that were never meant to be broken. Before it, most catapults relied on twisted ropes and tension systems, like the Roman onager. But the main problem was consistency. Those systems wore out, lost power, and behaved unpredictably. Medieval engineers needed something stronger, something repeatable. Around the 12th century, that solution arrived: the counterweight trebuchet. At its core, the design was almost brutally simple. A massive wooden frame held a long, swinging arm balanced on an axle. On the short end sat a heavy counterweight, often filled with stone, sand, or even lead. On the long end, a sling carried the projectile. When the arm was pulled down, the counterweight was lifted, storing energy. Release it, and gravity did the rest. But the real brilliance was in the details. The addition of a hinged counterweight allowed a smoother, more efficient drop, while the sling extended the arc, snapping forward like a whip and multiplying the projectile's speed. This was not just force. It was controlled physics. A well-built one could launch stones weighing over 100 kilograms to distances of around 200 meters or more, and with great accuracy for its time. Siege engineers could adjust the weight or sling length to strike the same section of a wall repeatedly until it gave way. One of the most famous examples was the War Wolf, built by Edward I of England during the siege of Stirling Castle in 1304, and its reputation alone was enough to terrify defenders. Number 5. Gunpowder weapons. This invention didn't change life. It blew the old world apart. When gunpowder reached Europe in the 13th century, likely through Eastern trade routes and the vast networks shaped by the Mongol Empire, most people had no idea it would eventually end the military order they had known for centuries. Gunpowder itself had been invented in China in the 9th century, But by the 14th century, Europeans were already turning it into something terrifying. The earliest known European cannon appeared in 1327, and by the Battle of Crécy in 1346, Edward III of England had already brought primitive artillery onto the battlefield. These early guns were crude, loud, smoky, and unreliable. But they introduced something medieval warfare had never truly faced before: explosive force at range. Soon came hand cannons, bombards, and later the culverin, each deadlier than the last. Stone walls that had stood for generations could now be cracked apart. And armored knights, once the symbol of battlefield dominance, suddenly looked a lot less invincible. In other words, they did not just improve war, they ended an entire military age. Number 4. The mechanical clock. Timekeeping devices had existed since the ancient world. But it was not until around 1270 that something truly revolutionary appeared: the fully mechanical clock. And honestly, this invention changed human life in a way most people barely think about today. Before that, time was loose. It moved with the sun, the seasons, and whatever nature allowed. People used sundials and water clocks, but both had obvious problems. Sundials were useless at night, and water clocks were inconsistent. That became a serious issue in medieval monasteries, where monks had to follow strict schedules of prayer day and night, no matter the weather or darkness. So they needed something dependable. What emerged were large iron machines, usually powered by falling weights. But the real breakthrough was not the weight itself. It was the escapement mechanism, especially the early verge and foliot system, which controlled that falling energy in small, regular beats. Tick by tick, the machine turned motion into measurable time. One of the most famous medieval clockmakers was Richard of Wallingford, the abbot of St. Albans, who designed an advanced clock in the 14th century. His work showed just how sophisticated these machines were becoming. At first, these clocks were not built to show minutes and seconds the way we think of them now. Many were simply made to strike bells and mark the passing of hours. But that alone changed all. Once towns and monasteries could divide the day into fixed parts, daily life became more structured. Work, prayer, trade, and public life all began to follow the clock instead of the sky. And that is why the mechanical clock matters so much. It did not just tell people what time it was. It changed how people understood time itself. Number 3. The heavy plow. Now, this is one of those medieval inventions that doesn't look impressive at first. But without it, a huge part of European civilization simply wouldn't have made it. Before the Middle Ages, most farmers in Europe used a basic tool called the aard, or scratch plow. Well, it worked fine in the light, dry soils around the Mediterranean. But move north, and everything changes. The soil there was thick, wet, and packed with clay. Try dragging a simple wooden plow through that, and it barely scratches the surface. Somewhere around the end of the first millennium AD, that problem finally had a very clever solution: the heavy plow. This thing was not just bigger, it was engineered. It had 3 key parts working together: the coulter, a vertical blade, sliced straight down into the soil; the plowshare cut horizontally beneath it. And then came the real genius, the mold board, which lifted and flipped the earth over completely. That single motion buried weeds, mixed nutrients, and exposed fresh soil to air. And its impact was supermassive. Land that had been considered useless for centuries suddenly became fertile farmland. The dense regions of Northern Europe began producing far more grain than before. That surplus mattered because more food meant more people. And by the 9th to 13th centuries, Europe saw one of its largest periods of agricultural expansion. Historians like Lynn White Jr. later argued that this tool was central to that transformation. Modern research even suggests it contributed to over 10% of the increase in population density and urbanization during the High Middle Ages. And here's the part most people miss. More food did not just mean survival. It meant time. Time for trade, for learning, for building cities, and eventually, for everything that followed. Even modern plows still rely on that same basic design. The power has changed, but the idea hasn't. Number 2, eyeglasses. Well, we are not completely sure who can be credited with the invention of eyeglasses. But somewhere around 1285 in northern Italy, someone quietly solved a problem that had followed humanity for centuries. Failing eyesight with age. Before that moment, growing older often meant stepping away from intellectual work. Reading became difficult and then impossible. For monks copying manuscripts, scholars studying texts, or anyone working with written knowledge. That decline was not just frustrating. It was the end of their usefulness. The solution was very simple. Early eyeglasses used convex lenses, carefully ground pieces of glass designed to correct presbyopia, the natural loss of near vision. These lenses were mounted into basic frames and held in front of the eyes. It sounds almost trivial now, but at the time, it was transformative. Cities like Venice and Florence quickly became centers for this craft, where skilled artisans refined the production of lenses. The first users were often monks and scholars, people whose lives depended on reading and writing. And once the benefit became clear, eyeglasses spread rapidly across Europe during the 14th century. What changed was not just vision, it was time. People could continue working, reading, and thinking well into later life. Knowledge was no longer cut short by biology. Experience could finally stay active instead of fading into memory. And that shift had consequences. A generation of older thinkers, still able to read and study, helped fuel the intellectual momentum that would lead to the Renaissance. Today, more than 2.5 billion people use corrective lenses. We mean, it is easy to overlook them. But in reality, they represent one of the simplest and most powerful extensions of human ability ever created. Number 1, the windmill post. While mills had existed since antiquity, it was in the 12th century that something far more adaptable appeared across Europe. And it was the post windmill. And this one solved a problem people had struggled with for centuries. Wind is unreliable. It shifts direction without warning, weak one moment and violent the next. Earlier attempts at using wind power, like those seen in Persia between the 9th and 10th centuries, relied on fixed structures that could not easily adjust. That limited how effective they could be. The post windmill changed that completely. Instead of building a fixed tower, medieval engineers designed an entire mill house balanced on a single vertical post. That meant the whole structure could be rotated. When the wind changed, workers would simply push the building around until the sails faced the right direction. It sounds pretty simple, but it was a huge leap in practical engineering. Inside, the system was just as clever. A set of wooden gears and shafts transferred the motion from the horizontal sails into vertical movement, turning heavy millstones used to grind grain. All of this was built using hand tools, with no metal frameworks or modern equipment. By the 13th and 14th centuries, post mills had spread across regions like England, Flanders, and northern France, becoming a common feature of rural and even urban landscapes. In places where rivers were scarce or unreliable, they provided a steady alternative to water mills. And their impact went beyond convenience. Windmills reduced the need for manual labor, increased food production, and supported growing populations. Some of these structures even remained in use for centuries with basic maintenance. That's what makes this design stand out. It took something as chaotic as wind and turned it into a dependable source of power, not by controlling nature, but by adapting to it. What do you think about these medieval inventions? Let us know, and be sure to give this video a like and subscribe. We'll see you later.